The broadcast is live. Okay. All right. So we're now live on Facebook for Free and Equal. I don't know how many people will be watching or how many people will tune in, so I'm just gonna give it a moment for people to get on the live stream. I know I sent this out to a few friends, so I hope that you've tuned in. I can't really tell who's watching from the platform that I'm on. Well, hello everyone. I'm Tarah Green, and I am very grateful for Free and Equal Elections Foundation and all the work that they're doing to create change from the ground up at a grassroots level. I toured with Free and Equal this last year, and we went to a lot of different places and met so many different people. Each stop of the tour we went on, we were with an entirely new group of people with different perspectives and ideas. And that's one thing I love about Free and Equal, is that they are providing a platform for independent voices and voices that aren't heard other than the two main parties, which we hear all the time. Free and Equal is opening up a platform so that everyone can be heard. Those who are oppressed, the minorities, the people whose voices are looked over. So I'm really grateful to have been a part of the tour and to know Christina Tobin and all the work she's done, and the other music artists that I've met along the way who have so many passions and interests in cultivating a new world where we live regeneratively, sustainably, and in harmony with one another. And today is July 3rd. We are approaching Independence Day tomorrow. Such a strange thing to think about with the condition of the world that we're in. Originally, this country was founded on the idea of freedom, and though even back then there were so many levels of entrapment that was ingrained into the people from coming from the rule of the Queen and coming from England, and people wanted freedom, so they came here so that they could be differently. Maybe that was by practicing their own religion, or perhaps it was by ending slavery. So as we approach this day, Independence Day, I'm thinking a lot about our individual sovereignty, our rights as human beings, as individuals, and our coexistence as a whole, and how we are interdependent, but we're also still individuals. And there's so much chaos going on in the world right now, it seems, if you turn on the news. But if you turn it off, what's right in front of you? I don't watch the news, and so my life is very immediate right in front of me. I mean, I tune in occasionally to be informed. Here in Oregon, on July 1st, there was just a new law that came into effect that requires mask wearing in public places. And that's been very interesting because we didn't have that law up until now. And I know this is phase 2 for some people. We didn't really feel the effects of some of that, though I have traveled to states where it was required. So that's been an interesting journey to see the world right now and see all of the laws being put in place, and wondering how they affect us as individuals and how they affect us as a whole, as interdependent beings. Sometimes the idea of freedom can be scary to people because we're afraid that freedom will hurt others. If we have freedom, if I have individual freedom, does that mean it's going to hurt you? And I don't think that has to be the case. Freedom is just like existence. There's a risk to everything. Every time we get in our cars and drive, there's a risk, but it also provides us with so many opportunities and life enriching activities where we can travel. So with anything, there seems to be a risk, but I don't believe that our freedoms have to harm each other. And we just need to understand where our rights as individuals begin and where they end. And that is where the other person's rights begin and end as individuals. And I believe that just like in the Declaration of Independence, that was written based upon natural law, that we do in fact have an inherent right to freedom that doesn't harm one another. So we as human beings have individual rights. My right is anything that doesn't cause harm to another sentient being, and that is the same for all other humans as well. So I'd love it if we could respect each other's rights and respect our own and understand that on a deeper level. And with our freedom comes great responsibility of protecting our freedoms. So we have to understand what our rights are, understanding that we are actually free to do anything that doesn't hurt each other. And that may be up to some people's interpretations, but it's actually really clear when you think about it. So I'm going to share a song with you that I began writing actually on the 4th of July last year when we were on tour. We were in Texas at Need Peace, a really wonderful venue that we had this great convergence of people with independent minds coming together to talk about our freedoms. There was a bunch of veterans because we were near a military base, and that's something I'm not exposed to every day. So it was really interesting to hear their perspectives coming from their life experiences. And I didn't actually complete this song until I was in Mexico at Acapulco this last year with Julian. And Julian is an excellent guitar player, and he plays some amazing chords to go with this song. And this song is about our freedom and our independence. I declare my independence as a small part of the all, a sovereign individual, answering true to my heart's call. Let's break our chains, step out of our cages, rise above the old ways that enslaved us, follow the moon with growth in all phases. As I know myself, the consciousness raises. Liberty means I am free. Evolve with me authentically. I declare my interbeing. We are one with separate choices. Let's co-create in harmony. Speak our truth and raise our voices. Break our chains, step out of our cages, rise above the old ways that enslaved us, follow the moon with growth in all phases. As I know myself, the consciousness raises. Let's break our chains, step out of our cages, rise above the old ways that enslaved us. Follow the moon as crypto raises, and the Fed, 'cause the bankers don't faze us. There's some. So I know in a world that we're in today, our freedoms can be confusing, and it may seem like many of our rights are being taken away or infringed upon in this day and age, but our mind is the greatest prison of all, and if we can just recognize our freedom and remember that we are sovereign beings and that we're here to co-create in a peaceful way and to live in harmony with each other, I believe that that's the most important step. Is once we know that in our minds and our hearts, then we can start to live that and lead it by example, and others will see how freedom isn't really that scary after all. And deep down, we all really want and need freedom of expression, freedom to be ourselves, and that can be so powerful, to be able to allow ourselves just to be ourselves and to accept ourselves for who we are and how we are, and to accept our feelings for what they are and our perspectives for what they are, and to accept others for their differences, and know that we're all little unique pieces that make up such a great, beautiful thing that we're in this world, this dance of reality. And it may become overwhelming at times with all of the suffering that we're seeing in the world, with the police brutality, with the confusing masks about the laws about masks that are confusing. We want to protect our vulnerable people, of course, but there are very confusing misinformations happening on the mainstream media. So another reason it's so important to tune into alternative medias. And I see the United We Stand project as, in a way, it's a part of alternative media, and so is the Free and Equal Elections Project, because they're providing a platform for the unheard voices, the ones that aren't being played on mainstream media, that aren't part of this left and right, this blue and red, this two wings of the same bird sort of situation. So sometimes we might begin to lose hope, or we feel a lot of pain and suffering because of these things. And this next song that I wrote is a song as it's sort of a lullaby to comfort us and remind us that we have a greater purpose and that we're here for something more, and we are more than the bodies we are in. We're more than just a cog in the machine of this greater system that might not make sense to us all. But we are divine, and we have a purpose, and we are of this earth, and we are just like each other and the plants and the things that sustain us. And there's this great cycle of life and death and rebirth, and we're all a part of that. So be still, dear, you are made of earth, grounded in this moment, remembering your worth. Take flight, for you are made of air. Spread your wings and fly with me, and we can face our fears. We're here. are made of water, and in this very moment, everything is as it is. Burn hot, dear, you are made of fire, it's shining bright within you, and the flames are getting higher. Don't let the character consume you. You're an old soul made of stars. It's alright, sapphire eyes. I'll still be fighting for our freedom. And if you need me, I'll just be right beside you, wild and free. And if you need me, I'll just be right beside you, wild and free. Don't let the character consume you. You're an old soul made of stars. It's alright, sapphire eyes. I'll still be fighting for our freedom. I hope that song can bring you some comfort in reminding you that we're all something greater than what we might get lost in, the characters that we play, that we might get wrapped up in and consumed. This next song that I'm going to play for you, and I'm just going to play this one more, this last song. This last song is I have a lot of passion about the topics that I wrote and about in this song, and some of the words I'm just going to talk to you about ahead of time because I want you to fully understand the song. This song has concepts such as permaculture in the song. Permaculture is a permanent, regenerative, sustainable form of agriculture that we're observing nature and working with nature rather than coming in and deciding like we are going to make this thing, do this thing. We're coming from a more receptive and balanced approach where we're part of this whole system and we want to understand what the needs of the plants and animals, etc., are so that we can work with them and we can really thrive. Because when we can find that flow and tap into it, we can create abundance. So permaculture is one of the values in this song, as well as intentional community. This is something I discovered a few years ago when I came to Oregon. And an intentional community is sort of like a family. It's when people come together with common goals and visions and intentions, and then they work towards those goals together, and they create a community where they can collaborate. And I love the idea of intentional community, and I've lived in several communities and have got to experience firsthand what it's like and how effective it can be. And I think as our world is shifting, I think intentional communities are one of the most important things that we can look to as a regenerative solution, because there are so many of us in this world who have different opinions, different feelings, different viewpoints. If we can create smaller micro communities rather than having a giant nation or even a global world that tries to enforce our beliefs upon one of each other, if we could just rather instead respect each other's rights to freedom and different beliefs and come together with those who share our common values and beliefs, then we'll feel validated and we'll have people to collaborate so that we can actually all achieve our dreams, rather than trying to just enforce an idea upon everyone, because one size does not fit all. And anytime that we have a majority rule type of situation where we're trying to force our views upon others, it guarantees that there will be a minority that's oppressed. So rather than oppressing that minority, I want there to be space in this world for every group of people to exist so that they can truly explore and be who they are and feel the validation and support that they need, and also have a degree of respect for those who are different from them and allow for the space in this world for those people too. So yeah, permaculture, intentional community. Another concept in this song is Agar Ism. And Agar Ism comes from the Greek market, which was called an agora, where people would gather together and freely share and trade and barter and sell each other their goods, etc. They would be able to come together in a marketplace in the agora and associate freely with each other, which is the idea of a true free market, where there's nobody saying what we can or can't do, and we just come together and we can share information that isn't being censored, like so much of our information is nowadays on the internet. And now it's difficult to gather because in many places we're not allowed to meet, or whatever, not allowed. I mean, I know that there are certain things attempting to prohibit people from gathering together, but it's so important and essential to our life and to humanity that we interact with each other. And to be able to look at each other's faces is so key and essential. I studied psychology at Eastern Washington University, and when I was learning about memory and cognition, I discovered that there's parts of the brain that light up when we see faces. And sometimes they'll even light up when we see cars or houses or things that have something similar to faces, because there are these key components of the face, the mouth, the eyes, the nose, where we recognize each other as human, and it lights up certain parts of our brain and boosts our well-being in certain ways. And now I know so many people are in isolation, and then when we finally do interact, they're only seeing this much of someone's face or less. And that can create a lot of difficulties psychologically for humans, where we are blocking those parts of our brains from lighting up, and we're not getting the human connection that we need, and that is super essential for our well-beings. So I encourage you all to look at each other's faces and just soak that up whenever you get the chance. It's so important to remember our humanness and to be able to communicate fully and look at each other. So Agar Ism is very important because I believe that all humans should be able to freely interact with each other in however they'd like, so long as they're not hurting others. And that is what an agora would provide for us, a truly free market where people could come together and barter and trade, and it would really help support our local economies and intentional communities and such, because people could then be doing the things that they're passionate about and that they love, and things that have a true purpose that are sustaining us on a local level. And I know so many people who are struggling in this world because, well, right now I know a lot of people have lost their jobs, but even before that, people were struggling because they're depressed, because so many people have a job that feels meaningless, where what is it that they're doing? They're going to do this thing that doesn't entirely make sense, but they need it because they need a paycheck, because they need to provide for themselves in this world. And I think there are so many other ways that we could be providing for ourselves that make a lot more sense than doing something completely meaningless. And I hope that everyone can do more than just try to find meaning in something meaningless, but really create something of meaning and find your passion and find your dream and do something of real value. I see our currency as energy, and what we put forth our energy and time to do is true currency. The dollar that we use, the US dollar, the Federal Reserve note, that is not a true currency. It's just something that we kind of have to use in this realm that we're in right now because we have a system built upon it, but it is corrupt and inhibits a lot of our freedoms. And I would love to see a world in which we can see energy as a currency and many other forms of currency, instead of just this one that is becoming less and less valuable each day. With our time and our energy as our current, we may end up doing something of real value if we began to think like, what are we contributing to the world on a greater level when we spend our time and energy on something. And that's truly what matters, and I want everyone to be able to step into their purpose. And I know that sometimes the system that we're in is actually counterproductive in that, because one of the greatest problems that I see that exists right now is that people are not allowed to exist without paying someone Federal Reserve notes. Is there a place that people can exist where they can just be? I mean, I don't know of one. I've looked into homesteading laws and things, and where people used to be able to come and like take a plot of land and make it their own. And I know personally through experience how much sovereignty and independence and freedom we can gain when we have a relationship with the land. But in the system that we're in now, and with the population, etc., it's getting increasingly harder for people to be on land. Rent is extremely high. People are confined into small houses and apartments and forced to go into smaller spaces than they're physically comfortable being in. And this is taking a toll on our well-being and our creativity as humans. But if we could connect with the land, we would be able to grow our own food. We would be able to utilize the resources of the earth to create our own wealth in so many ways. So I'd love to see a future where the government doesn't own the land, and the land actually is the people's, and it's not about ownership, it's about stewardship, where we can actually have a relationship with the land that's consensual and mutual, and we're coming from a permaculture perspective where we're not just putting our impact upon the earth, but we're also listening and being receptive. I think that there's so many solutions that could be solved if we could just exist on land without someone forcing us off or threatening to harm us if we don't pay them. So yes, intentional community, Agar Ism, permaculture, these are some of the concepts that I have put into the song, as well as I want to mention nonviolent communication. Speaking to each other compassionately is so important. If we look at natural law and the idea that we have the right to do anything that doesn't harm another sentient being, and this is the law our Declaration of Independence was based upon. If we look at that, it's easy to see in the physical, like we don't run people over with our cars, we don't hit them, we don't spit on them, etc., because that would be an obvious violation of their physical body. But communication is really important to recognize too, and that's like another level, and it's a little bit more subtle. But speaking kindly and compassionately to each other is something that I'm learning more and more each day, and how effective it is. And we've all had years of conditioning of authority talking down on us, telling us that we're bad or wrong, or threatening to punish us. And it's so conditioned into most of us that we speak to ourselves this way, and we speak to our loved ones this way. And we're not doing it maybe consciously, and perhaps on a deep level we have good intentions, but the reality is, if we're speaking in these harmful ways that are coercive or threatening or authoritarian, then we're continuing to recondition ourselves in those ways, and it actually has a harmful effect, and it can be aversive to those who hear us, and even to ourselves it can be damaging to speak to ourselves in these ways. But if we can come from an approach of having compassion and listening to each other, being kind, then we can actually open up to a whole new level of understanding that we are all something more than just this system. We have a divine purpose. We're greater. We're connected. We're interdependent. We are beyond individuality while also individuals. And we can learn when we learn to speak compassionately, we can understand each other a lot more. So I encourage everyone to do a little research. If you haven't heard of nonviolent communication, you can look it up. There's a lot of great resources online. It's also known as compassionate communication, and it includes the ideas of observing non-judgmentally to see what we can truly see as just the facts, and then identifying our feelings and knowing what feelings are as sensations and emotions versus projections, ideas, being able to separate feelings from ideas, and then to identify our needs. What is it that we're truly needing? Because most of the time, any sort of conflict situation can be boiled down to an unmet need. So if we're able to stop and take a step back, get out of our emotions and our triggers, observe, identify our feelings, and then come to find what is the need that is not being met, or maybe the need that is being met, and understanding that in ourselves as well as others. If we're having conflict with another, what is their unmet need? Because we're all just humans with universal basic needs. We all need freedom. We all need love. We all need food, water, shelter. We all need human connection. Well, maybe arguably some of us don't, but I don't know. So we all have these needs, and then if we can learn to make requests upon these observations and feelings and needs, when we can voice our requests clearly, we're a lot more likely to get what we want. But we also have to voice a request as a true request and not an expectation when we're communicating with others, because we have to respect each other's sovereignty and understand that we can't make someone do something. They are an individual. We can request, and we have to be willing to accept their answer and revisit things differently if they're not receptive to our request. So yeah, I think that's the main concepts that I just wanted to talk about before I play this song for you. Hope you enjoy it. Let's grow a garden, build a permaculture retreat partner, to subvert the new world order from the system. No masters, no slaves, but the system. With the sort of following gains, cause taxation is death, and government is slavery. So let's grow a garden and live in community. Do no harm, but take no shit. It's the universal law to raise our consciousness. Whoa. Let's speak compassionately and act consensually. I'm a voluntarist, the only master of me. So fuck the system. Live free or die, fuck the system. See through your true when I taxation is love, and government is slavery. So let's grow a garden and live in community. Do no harm, but take no shit. It's the universal law to raise our consciousness. I don't vaccinate and I shoot guns. I suppose if that song were to really boil down to one concept, it's consent. And all of the concepts that I mentioned, Agar Ism with the free market and speaking compassionately to each other, and permaculture, this idea where we observe nature and get its consent. It's really all about consent. And we as individuals own ourselves and nobody else and nothing else. And consent is so important. And I if we could just understand consent, then we would all be free and we would all be able to respect our own rights and the rights of others. And I know consent can be easier understood in some concepts, but I encourage you to explore it in ways that you may have not considered. We each have our own body and we have our choice to do what we want with it. And if somebody else doesn't like the idea of what we're doing with our body, that might be hard for them because they don't agree. But ultimately, if we are the ones consenting and choosing to do that with our body, that's our choice, and others have their say over their own body. So I hope you enjoyed this live stream, and thank you all for tuning in. And if you'd like to follow my work further, I have a YouTube channel. My name is Tarah Green. It's spelled on the screen TARAHGREEN. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and OmensofAlchemy is my Instagram, and my website is OmensofAlchemy.com. And aside from exploring philosophy and political activism and connection with the earth, I'm also passionate about palmistry and tarot as tools to know ourselves more deeply. So you'll find that on my website. I study palmistry and tarot as this extension of psychology, where it's a tool in which we can view ourselves and dive deeper and look into our subconscious and look into who we are, to help us understand all of these concepts and heal ourselves, because we as individuals have a great responsibility over ourselves first and foremost, and we can lead by example by creating change within ourselves and understanding ourselves more deeply, and others will see us doing this, and truly leading by example is the way that I see in the world. Thank you all for watching. Blessed be. Stay wild and free.